Hello, my name is Rachel Lackey, and I'm a Master of Applied Science student at the University of Guelph, working with Dr. Levison and Mackie to investigate groundwater as a source and pathway for road salt contamination of surface water and aquatic ecosystems in the Great Lakes Basin. This work is being done in partnership with the Ontario Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks at the University of Guelph in the School of Engineering in the Morwick G360 Groundwater Research Institute. Think back to the last major snowstorm we had. You probably applied road salt or sodium chloride on your driveway to melt ice or to prevent falling snow from accumulating. If you knew that virtually all the salt you applied on your driveway ended up in your local water resources, would you reconsider the amount you used? Approximately 5 million tons of road salt are applied on Canadian roads each year. This salt does not simply vanish following snow or ice melt. Instead, it dissolves into sodium and chloride ions, which are then either transported by surface runoff into nearby surface water bodies or infiltrated into groundwater systems. Groundwater ultimately discharges into surface water network and therefore acts as a delayed or long-term contributor of chloride, potentially further degrading our local aquatic ecosystems. In recent decades, chloride concentrations have been increasing in Ontario lakes and streams, with concentrations in urban areas routinely approaching or exceeding the chronic Canadian water quality guideline of 120 milligrams per liter. Elevated chloride concentration in excess of 1,000 milligrams per liter has also been observed in groundwater. The figure on this slide illustrates shallow groundwater chloride concentrations from the time period of 2011 to 2020 as developed from geospatial analysis of publicly available datasets in southern Ontario. While the role of surface runoff in elevated surface water chloride concentrations is more well understood, groundwater as a source and pathway of chloride contamination, particularly within the Great Lakes Basin, remains poorly investigated. Therefore, the primary objective of this project is to evaluate the contribution of groundwater to the chloride load within the densely urbanized area of the Western Lake Ontario Basin. The preliminary stage of this research involved investigating the current state of knowledge regarding groundwater chloride impacts to the Great Lakes, focusing on southern Ontario. By comprehensively reviewing literature available within this region, we found that there was a lack of holistic monitoring and modeling of chloride, an absence of source characterization, and significant spatial and temporal monitoring data difficulties. Furthermore, we observed that there is a distinct shortage of studies in this area that examine urban versus rural land use, direct contribution of groundwater chloride to the lakes, areas outside the GTA and Lake Simcoe watersheds, and the U.S. side of the Lake Ontario watershed. This is illustrated in the figure on the slide that displays the locations of past chloride studies in the Lake Ontario Basin. Our research aims to fill some of these knowledge gaps and develop recommendations that highlight the seriousness of this issue from a groundwater perspective to support future best practices and policies. The compilation and geospatial analysis of existing data will be supplemented by a new field investigation to better understand how groundwater receives chloride and ultimately delivers it to the Great Lakes, focusing on the Western Lake Ontario Basin. Our plan is to discretely and continuously monitor chloride concentrations, dynamics, other major ions, and isotopes in groundwater and surface water at multiple field areas within the Credit River watershed, which outlets to Lake Ontario. Thank you so much for listening, and please direct any further questions to the emails on the slide.